Chad, look, first and foremost, everything that took place with Tua Tagovailoa last year was scary. Concussions, one that was not confirmed, but 4 days later, he's on Thursday Night Football, and the first confirmed concussion takes place in Cincinnati.
Remember, by the way, when the claim was when he stumbled when he stood up, there was some weird leg
back
thing
injury.
or back injury. Yeah, that's
like
what it
back
was.
Spasm
a back spasm. Yeah,
which he had been on the injury report earlier in the game for.
But everyone who saw it, none of them being doctors, said, "Yeah, that's a concussion."
So
pretty easily diagnosed concussion when he stood up, but yet doctors were arguing, "Oh no, it's a back spasm."
So let's just rewind to that game. An independent neurologist was fired over that, and here we are with Tua and the Dolphins. And I get it. They picked up the fifth-year option. I would too. It's $24, $25 million. When you start looking at the annual salaries for quarterbacks, that's going to be extremely affordable in what would be a potential prove-it year for him, right? But we go from that storyline that week in a concussion protocol that was they looked it over. They then made adjustments to it. Teddy Bridgewater was removed from a game where he had no business being removed from the game. And we're now talking about the guy who is training judo so he can take falls better. But this comes after he contemplated retirement. Here's Tua.
I think I considered it, for a time, having sat down with my family, having sat down with my wife and having those kind of conversations. But really, it would be hard for me to walk away from this game with how old I am, with my son. I always dreamed of growing, playing as long as I could to where my son knew exactly what, he was watching his dad do. And it's my health, it's my body, I feel like this is what's best for me and my family. So, I love the game of football. If I didn't, I would have quit a long time.
And I respect any player that has that opinion. And I'm not trying to make light of what is a very serious injury. But, it's laughable to me that all of a sudden the headlines are he's going to devote 1 day a week to judo training so he can learn how to not hit his head on the ground all the time. And that's all of a sudden the headline, instead of the fact that what we saw last year is bound to pop up again because he's known for hitting his head on the turf. And by the way, it's a contact sport where you can't necessarily always control
getting your head bounced off the turf.
You see where I'm going with this? What the Dolphins are rolling it back. And I think Tua when healthy, and Armando, by the way, would join us in this segment normally. He's under the weather today. So, Armando, feel better. And he could clarify all this. But, Chad, Tua when healthy at the start of the season, the Miami Dolphins were Super Bowl contenders. True?
Yeah, they were great. They were one of the stories of the early part of the year.
Without him, they were just a playoff contender. Their backup right now is Mike White, who, the Jets for a brief moment were playoff contenders with him. You get where I'm going here. They're just rolling it back, and not every team has the luxury of being the Miami Dolphins, where you have a quarterback under a rookie contract and you have loaded up on offense. They can put up all kinds of points. And with the window of opportunity right there, and maybe they're not winning it this year, but the window is open. They're not making a move. And I guess the excuse would be is because they gave up the pick because Stephen Ross was tampering with Tom Brady. But you don't try to do more than that this offseason? Why is Trey Lance not mentioned in Miami? It makes a lot of sense. Again, there are a lot of teams that could use the talents of Lance just to see if you can develop him into more than what he was in San Francisco, if in fact he's available.
Allow me to give a possible explanation.
Okay. Tua's healthy?
They're scared. The Dolphins are scared of the optics. of being a team that dumps the guy that so visibly was thrown to the turf, not once, but twice concussed in back-to-back games, and then went out and played that Thursday night. And the Dolphins in the league took a bunch of heat for it. Hutton mentioned it. Someone was fired over it.
Yeah.
And I don't know that this is the case, but I do think that part of the thinking in 2023 with a lot of people in sports is, how is this going to look? And I think for the Dolphins to just throw him aside, which from a business and competitive perspective, they should consider. The sad reality of it is they should consider that because of the history now. But I think they're looking at it and saying, optically, this is going to look terrible.
Well,
if we're in the market to immediately upgrade and go find another quarterback, so we better wait a year to do that and let this thing play its way out. Because if they just ditched him, there's, the columns that will be written. What's going to be said. What Tua Tagovailoa's attorney could say about it. Possibly if he ended up out of a job in the league because of this.
Yeah,
I think that's why the Dolphins are a little bit more willing to play ball with Tua as opposed to trying to upgrade at QB.
What every team, though, has to do is play ball with the new concussion protocol. And this dude wasn't cleared for a month for any type of football activity after the last concussion at the end of the year. And, in fact, they just continued to hold him out of fear of putting him back out there. To me, that's where the fear comes from. You can bring him back if you feel like, man, when he's healthy, we're really good. And that's true.
Yeah.
But you have to have this contingency. I don't know why they're just going forward with what they – and by the way, the offseason's not over yet. But no one's talking about the Miami Dolphins. I'm here to say they have a window that's open, and I wouldn't just bank on the fact that Tua's going to learn how to fall because he's taking judo like Ronda Rousey. See what I'm saying?
And
it's laughable.
And take the
one day a week judo training is going to prevent him from taking a hit to the back of the head and convulsing on a field on Thursday Night Football. No,
if that is laughable.
If that were the case, all these quarterbacks would be doing this.
Yeah,
mandatory.
Well, I mean, we know why. Like it's okay to say it. It's the same reasons that
optics.
Everyone is. Well, not even the optics part of it. The Tua getting slammed to the turf the way that he has. It's not solely for this reason, but I never saw Big Ben Roethlisberger get thrown to the turf like a doll and his head bounced off of it because he's 6'4", 6'5", 260 pounds.
And Bryce Young's about to be the number one overall pick.
It looks more like a wrestling match when you bring Ben Roethlisberger to the ground, even if you're a defensive lineman. And the same questions we asked with Bryce Young.
Right.
Can his body, at his size and his frame, his height and his frame, take that level of abuse? Tua Tagovailoa is bigger than Bryce Young, but not by a ton.
No, but
he's 6 foot.
Comparable, sure.
Yeah, not a big guy also, so it's easier to wrap him up and take him for a little ride like a little child and sling him around, and then he bounces off the turf, right? I mean, those are the plays that we're talking about here with Tua.
It was a very...
And you don't need to take judo.
Thank you.
If you're Cam Newton. Cam Newton gets hurt because he's trying to run people over during games.
But not even that. Like I think there's a deeper study here because...
is Anthony Richardson going to take judo to learn how to fall better? I mean, that's my point about the size of some of these quarterbacks.
Does Tua and Bryce, and let's go with the other quarterbacks that we're comparing them to, did they have concussion issues in college? I don't see nearly the amount of concussions in college. And I think it's very difficult to just presume it's going to happen or it's not, and that a judo class once a week is going to prevent it. It may prevent one, but like it's just... I just shake my head at the headline when all these. I mean, we were sitting here like discussing whether or not the guy should play again when we saw the second one, which was really the third one, concussion last year, and now all of a sudden it's like, yeah, I contemplated retirement, but I'm doing what's best for my family, and I'm going to learn how to fall.
Well, take the reasons behind the contemplation of retirement out of it being concussions. And just make it any reason. If your guy's at a press conference saying, I had to really talk it over with my family and we considered it and I really thought hard about retirement, but instead I wanted to come back because football means a lot to me. If that's because of age or because you're burnt out or because you have concussions. If I'm that team, I'm looking for options behind that person.
He is the face.
If that's the statement being made in the offseason.
Like it or not, fair or not, he is the face of concussion protocol. And they have backed him up currently with
there's
Mike
a helmet
White.
being designed that's inspired by Tua.
But Tua doesn't have to wear it unless he wants to.
Yeah, well,
You see what I'm saying, though?
The judo may help with that. He can
But
keep with the same helmet.
I'm not trying to make light of it because I do think he's taking it very seriously. But at the same time, like the same reporters that are out there, like, oh, we've got changed the protocol. I'm seeing these headlines about judo, and I'm thinking, like, where are we going in this cycle of concussion protocol and what should be done and what's not? And I mean, if I'm being honest, if it was malpractice to just overlook the guy who came back after halftime, we're just going to accept the fact that he's taken a judo class and all of a sudden everything's cool? If I'm just being honest.
Yeah, you're looking at this.
It's BS.
You're looking at this from the Dolphins' perspective and what they should be doing behind him. Contemplating retirement, the injuries. The business move here is to cultivate a better plan for a starting quarterback, or at least an option to compete with Tua or be right there ready to go, even if it's drafting a guy in the first round, whatever it may be. I get all that. But go back to that Thursday night when everyone saw him get hurt a second time. And I remember watching, I think it was the Today Show the next day, and they're basically like, hey, look at this sport that treats their players like meat and gladiators, that, Christians being thrown to the lions, essentially. That's what Tua Tagovailoa is. That was the national discourse after this. So fast forward months later and think about the Dolphins cutting Tua Tagovailoa, throwing him out to the sidewalk and saying, can't take this risk anymore because we don't know if you can stay healthy because of the concussions. I do think optics plays into this a bit.
But Chad, I wouldn't cut him. I'm just surprised that we've seen really nothing behind him so far. Teddy Bridgewater makes more sense than Mike White, which is what they had backing him up last year in case
maybe
Tua wasn't good enough, and then all of a sudden he was really good with that offense.
And maybe they surprise and draft a quarterback whenever they pick first.
Maybe. But also, like, I really think this was the offseason for them to jump in with Lamar Jackson. And they don't have the first-round pick to do it because they were tampering with Tom Brady on the yacht. And if anyone's going to be
They need to
get
Lamar Jackson on that yacht. That's what they need to do.
But
now's the time.
And by the way, if Tua wanted to retire, I don't blame him.
No, not at all.
I don't blame him. I don't blame Andrew Luck. I don't blame Jake Locker. I mean, the list goes on and on of guys who are pointing to their health. And when I see the presser and I saw the images, like, it's more than a weekly judo class.
Yeah.
To get a.
And I want to be clear about it because I'm not trying to make light of all that. And him talking about the retirement. My point is, I don't blame Tua for considering retirement, or even if he did retire. Don't blame him at all. But on the flip side, I also don't blame the Dolphins for exploring options when I hear that my starting quarterback is considering retirement. And if I'm a fan, quite frankly, I do blame the Dolphins if they hear that he's considering retirement and they're not doing more to have a contingency plan when he's done. So by doing virtually nothing, I would blame them if I'm a fan of the Dolphins. They're not doing enough.
Well, so far. But no one's discussing the Dolphins because they're not in the first round. That's all they have to have some type of plan.
What if they traded into the first round?
They can't just run it back.
What if they drafted Hendon Hooker or someone else late in the first round by trading back into it? That could change the perspective of how they're handling this, obviously. I don't see that happening, though.
They can't just run it back with what they did. Because their quarterback is the face of concussion protocol.
Fingers crossed they can get through a season without any concussion issues with Tua or any major issues, and that they can be a contender with him.
There are not 32 good starting quarterbacks. There are not 32 good backups either. I'm not saying that everything has to be perfect, but there's not this. I do think Miami can be a contender because they were whenever he was eligible to play. And now more than ever, he's not going to be when he takes another hit. Even if it's not a concussion, he's out.
Yeah.
And I'm just surprised by the judo class stuff, personally. Chad, the A's. They are
toast.
Well, no. Isn't it the given headline of 2023 that the A's are going to Vegas?
Yeah, now we have a tract of land to prove it. Southwest side of the Strip, about a mile away from the arena, T-Mobile Arena, is where a new ballpark will be built at $1.5 billion with a retractable roof. So the Vegas A's are about to be a reality.
So within a 2-mile radius, you will have T-Mobile Arena.
The Vegas Knights, the Golden Knights.
And UFC.
Yeah.
You will have the Allegiant
Raiders
Stadium, and you will have the new baseball ballpark. 30,000 seats, right?
And it's only a matter of time for the NBA probably shares that arena with the hockey team.
I think they're trying to develop their own NBA arena there, and LeBron's going to own the team,
which would be awesome. 30,000 seats.
Yeah.
For this baseball, the ballpark,
which is perfect.
Yeah. And we'll call it a ballpark because I think it's baseball exclusively. This venue.
It is, yeah.
So a 30,000 seat ballpark. They average under 10,000 right now in Oakland. This is what was going to happen. It's what should happen from a business perspective. I can't help but also be sad for fans in the Bay Area and Oakland A's fans.
Yeah.
The team's been there for over 50 years. They had a dynasty in the 70s with Reggie Jackson and Vida Blue and other great players. They had another great run in the 80s with Jose Canseco and Mark McGuire and Dave Stewart, who we've had here in studio. And
Henderson.
Tony La Russa as their manager. I mean, a great A's team. Ricky Henderson, absolutely. They had an incredible team then, too. There's history there. There's a good baseball market there. There's fans for years and years for the A's that just got pummeled into the ground in a I'm not even going to call it a ballpark, in a facility that housed a baseball team and a football team that they played on concrete, and the Raiders at one point played on infield dirt in that place that's now inhabited by a possum in their visitors' radio booth where the visiting radio booth can't go in. And it's just atrocious. I mean, I remember last year we had the story where the A's didn't even send emails out to season ticket holders to renew because they're basically, I mean, they are Rachel Phelpsing it, the plot from Major League. The ownership was trying to show how bad it was by not even trying to sell tickets. I've seen reports of concession stands not open. Only 2 or 3 in the whole ballpark will be open because they are wanting to make as little money as possible and just get the hell out of Oakland because the ownership could never come to an agreement with local politicians and city officials on a new ballpark. And because of that, longtime Oakland A's fans will now suffer. But in the end, it's what's best for Major League Baseball. Having a franchise in Vegas, keeping the A's name, which I'm sure they will, when they move to Vegas in colors.
Aces has been rumored.
Oh, just make it the A's. I hope it's the same color. I love the A's uniforms. I love the white cleats they wear.
Yeah.
Even with the gray away uniforms, the way they've done that for years. So keep it the A's. But, man, I feel bad for fans, Oakland sports fans right now.
Raiders.
Yeah, they didn't really do anything to deserve this. Raiders fans are ridiculous. Don't get me wrong. It's not like they're innocent here.
Well, the Raiders fans are also A's fans.
Those fans,
right?
Those fans didn't do anything to deserve these teams leaving their market.
And once they decided they were leaving, I was there after the Raiders had announced they were gone. They still showed up at the Coliseum.
And I wonder what this does for the plans of the reverse boycott that they were planning on June 13th. Now that they've bought this land and they're definitely moving to Vegas, I feel like this should probably end the reverse boycott and maybe just have a send-off where you sell the thing out in the last few home series for the A's, and when eventually, they're going to move on, whenever that day is going to come.
Let's just condemn it.
But the idea of the reverse boycott is a funny one, that no one goes to games normally, and to prove that it's not the fans' fault.
It's not.
They're going to sell out a game, and it's not the fans. I don't think anybody believes that.